So to some of you at least, this video is highly anticipated. As many of you know, the Sequential Prophet 6 is my favorite polyphonic synthesizer of all time. I can't count the number of tracks I've used it on. I've gigged with it live, and it's honestly sat next to me for 6 years and I've had nothing but good things to say about it. I mean, I made the whole Ode to the Prophet 6 video a year ago. So I'd go as far as saying the Prophet 6 brought me back to loving the creation of music. It's really that meaningful to me. So the Prophet 6 was released at NAMM 2015 and I was there for its release, but you know this if you've been here for a while. So 1 year later at NAMM 2016, I saw Dave Smith for the second of many times. Corey Henry and Nick Samrad were jamming on a new synthesizer. The homie Tony was there. And what makes this special is that Yamaha actually returned the name Sequential to Dave a year or so earlier, I believe. And thus the OB6, the second sequential instrument, was introduced. Quick summary, in 1987, Sequential Circuits went out of business and the assets were purchased by Yamaha, and that included the name. Sometime in 2015, Takuya Nakata, president of Yamaha, he gave the Sequential name back to Dave. Yukitaro Kakahashi, the founder of Roland, was said to have been instrumental in the return of the name and said, quote, "I feel that it's important to get rid of the unnecessary conflict among electronic music instrument companies." So with that, Dave Smith set out to build a whole new legacy of sequential synths, and his second synth was legendary, combining the powers of the great Tom Oberheim, creator of the 2-voice, 4-voice, and 8-voice, of course the OBX, OB8, and the behemoth Matrix 12. To make some sense of things later, I want to note that Oberheim Electronics Incorporated went bankrupt in 1985, and in 1988, Gibson Guitar Corporation acquired the Oberheim brand and for a few years continued to make several of the existing Oberheim products, including the Expander and Matrix 1000. Skipping ahead to the 2010s, and Tom Oberheim was creating new synths like the SEM and the TVS Pro, modern classics if you will. Just to cap this history off here, I want to share this picture that has Dave, Tom, Yukitaro, and of course, Bob Moog. This picture is truly legendary and shows the history of friendship and collaboration for decades. So Dave Smith already had a proven platform to build on top of with the 2015 Prophet 6. So creating an Oberheim synthesizer on that foundation, it makes perfect sense. The Prophet 6 is one of the most immediate and accessible synthesizers I've ever used, while at the same time being deep for sound design and also not so impractical with extras. The OB6 is the exact same way, and while on the surface they appear to be fraternal twins, they're quite different, so let me speak about that. Now, did I ever tell you that the Prophet 6 was the synthesizer that I maxed out my credit card for because I wanted it that bad? Well, what if I was to tell you that there's a company that lets you break up payments over time so collection agencies aren't blowing up your phone? Well, this video is made possible by Zounds. So yes, Zounds let your boy borrow the OB6 you see here, and thanks to them, I don't have to be drowning in bills just to make this video. And I have to say, personally, I've been using the Play As You Pay for years. So just pick a payment option that suits you and pay the gear off over time while being able to use your gear. It's really easy. I can't be buying $3,000 synthesizers just to make videos, y'all know that. So check out Zounds.com, and a big thanks to Zounds for hooking it up. The biggest difference between the Prophet 6 and OB6 is right here in the filter design. The Prophet 6 sports a 2-pole resonant high-pass filter per voice and a 4-pole resonant low-pass filter per voice inspired by the original Prophet 5. While the OB6 has a 2-pole resonant filter per voice with low-pass, high-pass, bandpass, and notch functionality inspired by the original Oberheim SEM filter. Now, I don't want to be one to state that a filter makes a synthesizer, but in this case, something is up here, but I'll touch back on that a little later. In addition to the filter difference, the Prophet 6 has a triangle wave for its sub-oscillator, and the OB6 has a square wave. This, in a sense, makes the bottom end of the OB6 a bit more harmonically rich to my ears, but it also makes it not as smooth for certain types of patches like the Prophet 6. Now, they're both 6 voices, the sequencer is the same, the FX sections are the same, the envelopes and the LFOs are the same, and for all intents and purposes, their hardware panel layout is basically the same. If you know the Prophet 6 and its button presses, you'll be right at home on the OB6. So when writing this video, I really had to ask myself the question, why is it that the Prophet 6 versus OB6 is like the top 3 questions that I've been asked on my channel over the last 5 years. And I don't know. And I really truly think it comes down to the filter design. So let me give you a bit of an example so you can decide for yourself based on this one section alone. So wrapping up my view of the sound here, I have to admit that I have never owned a vintage Oberheim synthesizer, so I have no comparison to that personally, but I do have a lot of experience with vintage sequential designs. And while I personally think that comparing the sound of a 40-year-old Prophet 5 to a modern analog like the Prophet 6 is foolish, I can say that the Prophet 6 does not sound like a Prophet 5 when you dig super deep, but on the surface, they're very, very similar. The true brilliance in both the Prophet 6 and OB6, in my opinion, is in their hardware design. Their knob per function, a preset button that makes what you see on the front panel what you're hearing, no screens, a compact 4-octave keyboard, built-in effects that are very good, assignable aftertouch, the polyphonic step sequencer, it's all here. So in 2021, the Oberheim trademark was finally fully returned to Tom, and as such, I think the once Tom Oberheim emblazoned front panel of the OB6 now just reads Oberheim. Now, since this is synth versus synth, I'm sure y'all are asking, which one would I pick? Well, on one hand, you possibly have the best sounding modern analog synth I've ever played against the most practical, it just fits in synths on the market. And well, for me, it's easy. I gotta go Prophet 6. Never has there been a moment that the Prophet 6's sound didn't work. It's not larger than life. It doesn't always blow your mind when soloed, but I make music with many layers and the Prophet 6 has always perfectly fit. The sonic signature has tons of history behind it, while its modern performance makes it a no doubt winner. The OB6 is like a freaking geyser going off in front of you. It's like an explosion of creamy sound that makes you say, damn! It feels like it steals the show, not in a bad way, but it screams to be heard. It's hard to explain it, but the OB6 could very well win in a blind test again and again, but that doesn't make it right for me. Now, before I go, I want to finish with a blind test of sorts. So I'm gonna do the little test here and you guys tell me in the comments, synth A or synth B, which is the OB6 and which is the Prophet 6. Anyways, like, subscribe, follow me on Instagram and Twitter, and check the blind test. I'll see y'all in the next one.
Wow.